Right. You've written your essay, you came up with a bangerang lead in your introduction, and you very clearly stated your thesis. Your four body paragraphs are well written. Your first main point, your second main point, your counter argument, and your third and strongest main point. So, how do you wrap it up? How do you tie it all together? That's where a good conclusion comes in. First of all, it provides a sense of closure. It reminds the reader of the important points made in the essay. It demonstrates that the author has accomplished what they set out to do. It should be he or she. It distances itself from the specific points made in the essay and takes a look at the bigger picture. It succinctly or very clearly restates the main idea and arguments, bringing them together to present a coherent thesis. That doesn't mean that you use the same words that you did at the end of your introduction. You will reword your thesis and your main points. So, a structure of a good conclusion. Let's look down here first. And I used to use this all the time in teaching, and it's one of somebody used it with me, so that's why I like it, because it made perfect sense to me. You take an inverted triangle, in other words, you turn it upside down, and that's what an introduction looks like. You start out with one of your four leads here, you work down, and your thesis and main points are at the tip. Okay. But your conclusion, and I made it colorful, it's just the opposite. You're going to restate your thesis and main points at the very beginning, and then you're going to not rehash everything that you did, but you're going to kind of take what you talked about, which was JonBenét's who killed JonBenet Ramsey, and you're going to apply it to a bigger picture. Where does what you say fit into the scheme of things in her death, in the investigation of her death, in deciding who killed her? Where does what you think and your experts think, where does that fit in? And where do we go from here? Okay, or some people, as you will see later on the slides, they'll say, well, so what? So you think an intruder did it. So what? Why is that important? Why is it important that you not falsely accuse somebody, namely in this case, the family? Okay, talk about it. All right, three main components of a well-written conclusion. Number one is your starter. Okay, I've told you that. That's rephrasing the thesis of the essay. The summary. The starter is followed by two or three sentences that wrap up the main arguments of the essay and show how they connect to support the central thesis. Your final sentence, and I wouldn't go over 4 sentences total in the conclusion. The final sentence of the conclusion and the essay connects back to the introduction. So go back and read your introduction again. Does it tie everything up, and does it compact everything together? Providing a sense of closure to the reader. So if you started out with a certain, maybe you found a quote or something. I'll explain this here in just a minute, but basically, let me read that again. The final sentence of the conclusion connects back to the introduction, providing a sense of closure to the reader. It demonstrates the importance of the ideas presented in the body paragraphs, propels the reader to a fresh view of the topic, and most importantly, ends on a positive note. You don't want to introduce a new theory in here. You got to stick with what you've done. But what I was going to tell you, I wrote, ironically, Donald Trump came along and just totally ripped up the press corps. And maybe some of it needed to be ripped up. But John F. Kennedy actually wrote, or he actually spoke to the Press Association. And he was so positive to them because he said basically that they are his checks and balances. When he messes up, his administration messes up, they will call him on it. And so in a democracy, the press is very important in keeping the government on its toes. And I still believe that to this day. It's just that we have a lot of news outlets like Fox and all that that we didn't have back in the 60s, or you know what, even in the 90s. They weren't crazy like this, or not so how audacious about it. So what I did is I started out, it was kind of a long quote, but I used part of it in the beginning, and then I used another part at the end. So basically, I sewed the thing up with a quote at the beginning, and then I continued it at the end, which actually brought everything together about what I had said in the paper. So you can do things like that. You can also do that with a statistic. You could answer a question. You could, I was trying to think, maybe the end of the story you didn't tell up in the first paragraph. So you're going to end it. Okay. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe it's something, or maybe it's a riddle. Maybe you want to put a riddle there. What, we'll see. I don't know what it would be. What has 4 legs and wears high-tech shoes? I have no idea. But you kind of get the drift. So you could actually hold part of it off until the end, or you could just actually say something, apply it to a bigger audience. What are you going to do about this? Some of y'all are looking at this and saying, well, so what? It's really sad that the little girl died, but why should we even care? Well, I'm not going to answer that for you. I'll let you answer it for yourself. If you really think it's for a grade, well, yeah, part of it's for a grade, but I think there is something bigger there that applies to all of us, and there before the grace of God go we. So, all right. Tips for writing a good conclusion. An effective conclusion should answer the implicit so what question and repeat why the reader should care. Again, so what? Really sad, pretty little girl, even without makeup on. Christmas of all time, somebody snuffed her out. I mean, why? But why should we care? You don't live in Boulder. You're not related to those people. But why should the reader care? And who is it? Who should especially care? Return to the themes in the introduction and refer to them using keywords, images, or parallel concepts. Okay, so maybe intruder is one, or the grate, or the basement, or things like that. Include an interesting quotation or insight from the author's research or reading. Again, when you're looking at these two new sources from Academic Search Complete, keep that in mind. Include a concluding sentence that leaves the reader with feelings of satisfaction or even curiosity. Avoid introducing new ideas and instead sum up the essay and suggest avenues for future research on the topic. So if you're talking about the parents did it, or Bert did it, or whatever you're doing, you don't bring in and say that the florist did it when he was delivering flowers. I mean, that's so out in left field. But there are people who will do things like that, or try to be kind of funny at the end and say, who knows, maybe the butler did do it. No, you don't want to do that. This is not supposed to be humorous. And yet, if you're a humorous person, you could let your voice out, but not by adding sound effects or sarcasm. Keep all of that out. That is not good. That is not a voice. I'm sure if you're sarcastic, you may talk like that, and that's fine, because I tend to be that way sometimes. I hope I'm not as bad as I used to be. but not in writing. There should be no sarcasm. It should be objective, but you can still get your voice out there. Here's some good conclusions. Okay, the first one was on euthanasia, which of course you'll understand if you don't know what it is, but I think you do. Euthanasia should be legalized in the United States. Making a sick person suffer is one of the worst crimes one can imagine. This argument proves that not only is euthanasia moral and ethical, but it also that healthcare professionals are doing a service to humanity by helping patients and putting an end to their suffering. Another one, college education should be free of charge. The main reason why education should be freely accessible at all levels is that adolescents without a college degree are more likely to remain unemployed and engaged in criminal activities than their more successful college educated peers. And what this person would have done was, the thesis is college education should be free, and then there would be a paragraph on people without college educations more likely to stay unemployed, and you might even add making below minimum wage or even minimum wage. They engage in criminal activities, a paragraph on that, and then by comparing their college educated peers. Now, keep in mind, in both of these, they also do have counter arguments later. And of course, the college education should be free. Your counter argument would be the national debt is already at trillions of dollars. Congress is fighting over how far they want to raise that ceiling, so we don't need anything else to add to our debt. I mean, or to the nation's debt, something like that. But you should have counter arguments in here. They just won't be in your thesis. The third one, according to the Department of Justice, human sex trafficking and cybercrime are connected as they both are the results of modern technology. Adolescents today spend hours with their laptops, PCs, tablets, and smartphones. Thus, they are more likely to become prey to several kinds of crimes including sexual abuse, identity theft, and property theft, among others. Okay, so these are all good examples that you can refer to. And that is the end of that, and over and out.